Hi, everyone. Karen Hollyback from Women's Abundance and KH Essentials. I am so excited about our guest today, Susan Bratton, whose work has served women and men who crave profoundly nurturing sex lives. She has been working as a trusted sex advisor for more than a decade, and her compassion and fearless approach to teaching the fundamentals of sex in a new way are just amazing. And not only is she the Dear Abby of sex, she's a wellness and intimacy expert. She's a speaker. She's been on NBC, ABC, The Today Show. She's been featured in New York Times. So without further ado, I just want to flash the screen over to Susan and welcome her today for the show.
Hi, Karen, and thank you so much for having me. I wanted to show you the t-shirt I wore today. In Women, We Trust. You know, you and I have been talking for probably about a year to get together for this conversation for all of your fans and followers and mine. And I really like what we've come up with for the subject matter today. I think that it's something that women will find almost like a relief. That's, I think, what I hope to do today in our conversation, is to give women this feeling that, oh, I'm not the only one that feels that way. Oh, other women are having the same experience of their sexuality and the world of sex, our culture and sexuality. And by the two of us coming together, I think we're kind of creating a big embrace for women to feel more sexually empowered just the way we are.
Oh my gosh, I'm so happy you said that, Susan. So, you know, everyone, for those of you who don't know her, I mentioned she's written many, many books and articles, but Sexual Soulmates is one of my favorites. And the things that we're going to be talking about today with Susan are 4 tenets or 4 quadrants that will help women reach their sexual empowerment. And but before we get into the juicy details of that, Susan, I was hoping you could share with the audience, how did you go from being voted in 2009 one of Silicon Valley's best or highest women of influence to being a sexpert for millions?
Yeah, I think that was probably just about a few years after my sex crashed and burned with my husband. I've now been together with my husband, Sir Tim, for going on 30 years. But about 10 years into our relationship, I think it was our 11th anniversary, I had one gin martini too many, and I said to my husband, I love you, but feel in love with more. And he was very angry with me because our sex life had fallen apart. And I really wasn't drawn to have deep intimacy with him. So we had ended up becoming platonic and raising our beautiful daughter, whom you've met, Taylor. She's such a pretty girl. We were raising our baby girl together, and we were striving in our careers, but our intimate relationship had gone by the wayside. And we said, all right, well, we could get divorced. We were at that fork in the road that so many of our friends were at as well. We could, you know, just get divorced and ruin our daughter's family life and divvy up all our crap, or we could try to save our marriage. And for us, it very much was an issue of lack of intimacy. And it was me. It wasn't my husband. He always wanted sex, but I didn't want to give it to him. And I did when we were married. So what happened in those first 10 years? Like, where did we go wrong? And I made a fierce commitment to figure out what it was that had screwed up our relationship, who screwed up our sex life, basically. And it turns out that some of it was me and some of it was him, but mostly it was the blind leading the blind, which I've come since to realize is basically where we all are. Because if you look at society, what you really see is lots of like romance and, you know, soulmate and things like that. And then you see pornography, or you see movies and television where, you know, he off her and on the bed and off her pants, doesn't even take off her bra, and just like plunges into her with no lube, no warm up, no foreplay, and she's supposed to be ecstatic about it. And like, that's the model. And that model is fundamentally broken. So what we did was we did a couple of things. We went to see therapists, marriage and family therapists. We went to a lot of personal development type of workshops to kind of grow up and get clear about what we really wanted in our life. And we went to a lot of sex workshops because you and I, we live in the Bay Area, and there are a lot of tantric workshops and somatic workshops and, you know, sex, love, and intimacy workshops and all kinds of things. And it took a lot of bravery for me to show up at those things. I'd almost always have an emotional breakdown when I went to one of these events because it was so confronting and triggering for me. But what happened?
I imagine it was probably confronting and triggering for Tim as well, right?
It didn't seem to.
No?
My husband is very placid. And he's just kind of like always able to just roll with whatever is. But for me, it was very confronting.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. He actually did really well with it. And what we realized was that we had no idea what we were doing sexually. We were really focused on one of the 4 agreements or 4 tenets or 4 quadrants or 4 facets of female sexual empowerment is matriarchal versus patriarchal sexuality. And I was in the, you know, paradigm of patriarchs, which is intercourse. It's all about intercourse. It's all about him having a climax and maybe I'm lucky if I. And for many women, we talk about bridging the orgasm gap between how easy it is for a man to climax from intercourse and how difficult it is for most women. Many women can never have an orgasm from intercourse. And yet men want to have intercourse with us like every day for the entire time of our relationship with them. And often we're not getting off. So we learned what to do. We learned how to make love. We learned how to go from having sex, which was no good for me and good for him, to making love that was really good for me to the point where I actually to have sex with him. It wasn't that I had to put it on my door, I had to, you know, screw up my interest for it or whatever it might be. It was really about, oh, now I actually want to be intimate again because of what we learned. And that's where I went from becoming where I was a Silicon Valley executive. I lived into this new business, which was back in 2006, a publishing company, publishing passionate lovemaking techniques, teaching people how to transform having sex into making love. That's really what we did. So, go ahead.
Well, and that's why you've been an advocate and champion for ageless sexuality since then, right?
Yes.
I mean, in passion, you believe that all women, which is really why you and I met, was in that women's health panel around menopause and perimenopause. So many women give up.
Yeah.
And so I'm so excited that you're here today. I'm really excited.
Well, that was funny because we did connect over sexual health, sexual wellness. And when I started Personal Life Media, I started with essentially orgasm techniques. Like, how can you give a woman really great orgasm so she wants to have sex with you? And then I realized that orgasm techniques aren't enough. You actually have to have bedroom communication skills. You have to be able to find your voice. You have to be able to trust the wisdom of your body. And then I realized, well, all of the great communication and sex techniques aren't enough. The third leg of a very solid sexual empowerment stool is making sure that your body is in good condition, making sure that your genitals are working well. And men and women both have a lot of problems with their genitals. It's, you know, we women have very delicate urogenital infrastructure, to use a Silicon Valley term.
Yeah.
And I had to learn a lot about how to make your vagina be able to withstand the punishment of intercourse if as you're aging, you're getting, dry and you're losing sensation and things like that. So when we were talking about what we wanted to give women as information today on this thing, And we spent a good hour talking about, you know, the world of women and what's going on. And that's where we came up with the 4 facets to female sexual empowerment. And the first one was finding your voice.
Mm-hmm.
And the second one is understand the difference between how the world paints sex in the patriarchal way versus how to make sex a matriarchal experience so that you're both more satisfied and therefore you keep having great sex. And then the third facet is self-care down there, understanding how to keep your lady bits in good working order so you actually enjoy sex. It's not painful like it is for so many women. And then finally, what's your orgasmic potential? I mean, you don't go on a trip without a map, yet we don't get a map of our sexual potential from anybody except people like me. And luckily, there are more and more sexperts like me out in the world showing people what's possible, what our orgasmic potential is. So finding your voice, understanding the way of sex and explaining that, if you have a male partner, explaining them. Understanding that there are things you can do to really keep yourself in good shape sexually. And that's a lifelong pursuit. And that you can have sex well into your 80s and 90s, satisfying, delicious sex. Menopause is not the end of sex for men, it's the beginning of a rebirth of our sexuality. And then finally, how incredibly orgasmic we are. And going back to the patriarchal, we often have orgasms like men instead of orgasms like women. And women have incredible orgasmic potential. And so that's how we came here to talk about those 4 things. And I really want to go into whatever quadrant you want to go into in whatever, or, you know, whatever way you want to do it.
Great. And thank you for circling back and kind of talking about how you and I came to this, because it was definitely, you and I could have kept talking for hours. Why don't we go ahead and start with the voice? I know that in your work, as well as some of the work that I do, helping women to understand and honor their desires. Like, what kind of advice would you give women on trying to figure out how do they figure out what their voice is, or how do they know what they want? In your voice? What are some of the techniques or things that you work with women on, or clients?
Did you ever hear that thing when people say, I don't know, I'm not an art expert, but I know what I like when I see it?
Mm-hmm.
That's a very common thing. Like, I don't know anything about art, but I know what I like when I see it.
Mm-hmm.
That is often the analogy that I use to help women understand that you may not think you know what you want. Like, a lot of women say to me, I don't know what I want, but I know what I'm getting isn't it. Like, you know what you don't like. And usually what you have is, no, you're getting what you want, but you don't say it because, well, I don't really know what I want. Or I maybe know a little bit about what I want, but my partner, especially if he's male bodied, is going to get his ego if I tell him what I want. And he's going to, you know, shut me down. I know what I'm doing. You don't have to tell me. I know how to do this, because men are testosterone forward, testosterone dominant, and the feminine, the female, the woman, is estrogen dominant, and that makes us very different. Testosterone is what gives you ball, gives you confidence. It makes you think you know more than you do. And the large majority of men, and I tell men this all the time, you think you are. Like, what if you weren't as good as you thought you were? And one of the things that I know about men is they're driven to want to please women. They want to do a job. They want to win. Very important to them. They want to do right by us, but they think they know what that is. So often in the trying to do a good job for us, they make us feel like we shouldn't say anything to them. Oh, I'm going to hurt his, then he's going to sulk, or he's going to contract, he's going to be weird, or what have you. And I don't really exactly know what I want. I just don't let it, I'll just suffer with. So what I like to do, and you up one, thanks for the second. This has really resonated with a lot of women, the idea of being soulmates and creating connection. I always say that sexual soulmates are co-created. We don't find our soulmate, we create our soulmate. And you can do that in the bedroom too. And one of the most important things is something I call the Sexual Soulmate Pact, P-A-C-T, an agreement. And that is actually a download. I'm going to probably give you a few downloads in the conversation that we have today, because I have a lot of free assets that I write up techniques and I just give them away. In my business, we are publishers of online programs, and we have plenty of people who buy, and I'm always happy to give, because I know that sexuality is kind of like, oh, I don't know, it might be weird. And so I create trust. And so I do that by giving things away. And the Sexual Soulmate Pact is an agreement that you can strike with your partner. And basically it does two things. One, it gives you the confidence to speak up, even if it's just to say what's not working for you. But often what you can do is you can transmute not working into what might work better. Mm-hmm. So it could be something as simple as harder or faster, slower, or could you take a break, or you're on my hair, or you're pulling, or can you go again? Can you not go against the grain? Can you go with the grain? Like pet me like a kitty instead of going up against my fur, if you will. Often the kind feedback can be in the positive as giving our partners an alternative. But really what we want to get to with our partners is the ability to blurt out whatever we need and have our partners be so confident that we love them and just want to give them good information to do a great job for us, that they are happy to say, thank you, baby. That's awesome. I love it so much. And when they say thank you to us after we've given them feedback, it relieves us. Like, oh, he sat. He didn't have a fit. He didn't contract. It didn't disrupt the flow. He just took it in stride and took the information and listened and heard me and course corrected. Mm-hmm. And so because we're estrogen, what we like tends to go in long waves of different day to day over the course of a month. Sometimes we want to be a kitty cat and we need to be petted and held and loved and calmed down and, really just supported sweetly. And other times of the month, we just want our partner to pick us up and carry us into the bedroom and throw us down and peel off our clothes and kiss us all over our bodies and just run the game and just take us away. Let us surrender to the pleasure of what they're going to do to us. For most male partners, they're a steady state. Everything feels good most of the time for them. They always want sex. It's all good. That's generalities, of course, here. So once a guy understands, oh, she's different every day, I need to have her tell me what is really her every single day. Because if I try what worked yesterday, it's not going to work today because she's different every day. And she's different in every moment. She could start out needing to be like a kitty and end up in the middle of a lovemaking date to be a tigress. So I've got to really let her tell me what her body needs. I call this reporting in from your animal. Because if you think about us, we are Homo sapiens, and Homo sapiens are on the tree of life of all the animals, the dolphins, the whales, the dogs, the cats, the horses, pillars, worms. We're on a branch of the tree of life that is the great ape tree. We're basically great. We're with bonobos and orangutans, and there's the Homo sapien. We are glorified monkeys. And so if we remember that we're Homo sapien, human being, and human being is an animal, we listen to our animal body and we understand that it's cyclical, and then it's not like, oh, we're fussy, or oh, we always want something different, or oh, he's doing something wrong. It's not that at all. It's that we live in these bodies susceptible to how much sleep we've had. Did we eat too much sugar? Do we have, are we hydrated enough? So once you do this Sexual Soulmate Pact, which you get at sexualsoulmatepact.com, And you have this agreement with your partner where you can blurt out anything that you need at any time, and they don't take it personally. They're like, oh, good info, good information for me to do a better job, babe. And they adjust. Things become much more easy for you. And then you can begin to really look inside to your own desire in the moment, and you can begin to love and leverage body's innate sensual wisdom. And because the masculine has often watched too much pornography, he's been brainwashed to think that that's what sex is. And that's not at all the kind of sex that women want to have. That's porn. It's degrading to women, has no foreplay, there's no warm up, there's no full sensual touch, there's no languorous kissing, there's no adoration, there's no verbal encouragement. I mean, there's no friggin' foot rubs, right?
How about what, looking into your eyes, right? I mean, you know, porn has taken all of the intimacy out of just the human connectedness, which I love how your Sexual Soulmate Pact talks about that, because if a woman has that security and doesn't have to worry about, oh my God, I need to tell him this or I need to think about that. If she's not in her head and she's in her heart and in her pussy, feeling how she feels, that is a big first step in having a better sex life. So I love, love, love that advice on how to help in the voice area. I would imagine just that first quadrant alone has helped a lot of your clients.
Yeah.
Have you also talked about, Susan, in order for a woman to know what she wants, oftentimes, you know, you and I talked about Regina Tomshire when we were speaking in the past as well. Yeah. And, you know, she's a big believer that a woman should know her body. She does not need a man to do that if she wants to practice or self-pleasure and start to feel what feels good to her first so that she can communicate that. Do you also talk to that aspect with women?
Yeah. I think solo self-pleasuring is a really important practice. And the more that you self-pleasure, the more that you have orgasms. And the more that you have orgasms, the better they get. And the more that orgasms you have, the more lubricated you get, the more engorgement you get. And engorgement is the blood flow to your vulva. So let's talk about self-care down there and orgasm and sensation and climactic satisfaction.
Absolutely. Yeah.
When, what did you say?
I said self-care down there, the next tenant. Let's go. Let's move on.
Yeah, self-care down there. The less you touch yourself, the less self-pleasure, and the older you get, blood flow you have. Blood flow is super critical for feeling pleasure. And as we age, when we're 50, we have half of what's called nitric oxide production that we did when we were 20. It's very similar. You know how as we age, our hormones kind of diminish over time. Well, for women, our hormone lines, so our estrogen, progesterone, as well as our testosterone and our oxytocin production, all are declining. And we can use bioidentical hormone replacement therapy to replenish our estrogen, helps keep our tissue, both skin as well as our vaginal mucosa, is like our oral mucosa, like the lining inside our vagina and mouth. Those are mucosal tissue. They get thin without estrogen. They also get thin blood flow without nitric oxide, which declines like our hormones do. And so a lot of think, oh, libido going down. My orgasms aren't as strong as they used to be. I don't feel the same amount of pleasure that I used to feel. I always tell women that it's actually testosterone that is the libido hormone. Estrogen is the plumping hormone. And nitric oxide is the plumping hormone, brings blood. Without blood flow, you basically have the same amount of erectile male body. So to use a banana as the explanation, you imagine a banana and your partner, if you have a male-bodied partner, his penis is sticking out of his body, and about half of his banana sticks out and actually goes in and down in his body. His penis actually looks like a tongue. If you took an anatomical picture of the actual penile tissue and your tongue, they almost look exactly the same. Your tongue goes in and down. So that's another thing that I think is very important, is getting a guy to think about the fact that his penis is not a piston like he sees in porn, especially when they're circumcised and they don't have that fold over of tissue. It's in our vaginal canal. So I like to tell my ladies to have your husband or your male-bodied partner think about his penis tongue. How is he licking you inside? How is he articulating his penis inside? And that will start to automatically make intercourse better. He's got half of it sticking out, so you can see when he's erect. But you have the same amount of erectile tissue in your banana as he does. Only about the stem's worth is sticking out, and the entire banana is inside you, up inside you. Your clitoris is like a little head and a little neck or shaft. That's like his glands and the shaft of his penis. And then it has these little arms that drape down over the opening to your vaginal canal. Little arms go down, and they're kind of a channel between your outer labia and your inner labia. In the channel there, that's where you'll feel underneath the clitoral shaft. You'll feel them going down. And then you have the legs of the clitoris, often called the vestibular bulbs. And those are like the little punching bags that hang down. And those are right underneath the outer labia, surrounding the opening to your vagina, under the pubic hair on each side of the opening to your vagina. So when you think about your erectile tissue, you've got the entire clitoral structure draped around the opening to your vagina. And then inside your vagina, on the roof of your vaginal canal, you actually have what's called the urethral sponge. Some people call that a G-spot, but it's a spot. It's much more like an extruded pool noodle that the kids play with in the pool, that foamy.
Yeah.
It comes right down from your bladder. It surrounds the entire urethral canal and curves right across the roof of your vagina, and then exits where your pee comes out. It's the channel for your pee, surrounded by erectile tissue. And your pee comes out below your clitoral glands, between what you would think about as the tip of your clitoris, and above the opening of your vagina, about halfway between them. All the way around the outside of that hole is wonderful tissue there. And then right inside the vagina, on the vagina, is wonderful tissue sponge. That's the second erectile system that you have in your body. And then the third one is on the bottom floor of your vaginal canal, between your vagina and your rectum, little spongy tissue that's called your perineal sponge. And that's erectile tissue. So now think about what I've just done. I've literally just described, if you've got a vaginal canal, now there's clitoris, clitoris shaft, clitoris legs, clitoris arms, clitoris legs, a sponge, and a sponge. Your entire vagina is surrounded with erectile tissue. But the problem is that your guy, he gets a hard-on and he's ready to penetrate you before you've ever had enough stimulation to get all your tissue full of blood. Add on the fact that if you're over 40, you're producing half the blood flow that you used to produce because you're losing all this ability to produce nitric oxide. So take a nitric oxide supplement. Mm-hmm. Ask your doctor not just to give you bioidentical estrogen. And I like Biest, the two kinds of estrogen, the balanced estrogen. Mm-hmm. That's a much better type of estrogen to get. And then have him or her, your doctor, them, give you testosterone, progesterone, and biased estrogen.
Mm-hmm.
And you can also ask them to compound oxytocin for you, which you can put inside your vagina, and that plumps up the tissue and makes it really nice as well. And you could, I'll just finish off. You can take nitric oxide supplement. And when you do that, it increases the blood flow to your pelvis, because when you get that tissue full of blood, when you get essentially, I want to call it a vulva erection. It's not even a clitoral erection because you've got a clitoris, urethral sponge, perineal sponge. When you get all that tissue puffed up, then it has more surface area, and that's what sends the signals of sensation to your brain that allow you to feel pleasure. So if you're all shriveled up and he's got a hard on and he's just getting inside you right away and you're not erect, you're never gonna have the kind of orgasms that you desire or feel the pleasure that you desire. So the matriarchal versus patriarchal view of sex is the patriarchal is, oh, I'm hard, I'm gonna stick it in. You know, because I don't know anything about your genital system and you don't either. The matriarchal view is, we're going to pleasure my yoni for a half an hour, 20 minutes before, and make her want you inside rather than being rushed for sex. Because testosterone is like full speed ahead, let's do it. And estrogen is like, give me a minute, I need to get there. And so finding your voice to make sure your partner understands why you need all of this pleasuring before penetration is super important. So go ahead, you had some questions.
Let's come back to the matriarchal and patriarchal in a minute, because I definitely want to, you and I have talked about the estrogen versus testosterone, but for a second, continuing on the yoni care and self-care down there. I know I've talked with, you know, Dr. Sherry Ross and Stephanie from Pelvic Health, and testosterone is underestimated for women topically. So I love that you brought it up, especially for engorgement. But I wanted to go back to, I know a lot of the listeners on here are also very natural, and nitric oxide, there are certain vegetables that are high in nitric oxide. So I wanted you to share a couple of those, even though they can look up supplements and talk to their doctors about that. Yeah. And then also, I think it would be good advice for women to, when they are self-pleasuring, to get a mirror and look at how much their entire vulva changes, right? So I've seen mine engorged and I'm like, oh my gosh, this is twice the size, right? And it changes dramatically. So if a woman is not aware of how much more engorged it can be and what it looks like, is that something also that when you're doing those, the sexual soulmate packs, that you, like, do evolved couples have the man know, like, oh yeah, she's looking pretty good, it looks like we've spent enough time? Does that happen in some of your more advanced coursework with the couple?
What I like to do is I like to empower men to describe what they're seeing as they're pleasuring their partner. So, for example, you might decide that what you want to do is, and you can do these things in any order, whatever works out, but your mouth is basically one end of the tube and your vagina is the other end of the tube. And it's attached. It's called the hollow flute, or the golden bamboo channel. You know, there's a million names for it. And kissing is a really good way to start getting turned on, and kissing will actually open your yoni up. And yoni, by the way, is a word that I like to use for the entire female genital system. Mm-hmm. It's a Sanskrit word used in tantric lovemaking that I think is pretty, and it's spelled Y-O-N-I. Because we don't really say vagina anymore, because vagina is the patriarchal view. It's just the sheath that his penis goes in, which means he's not thinking about the clitoral head, the clitoral shaft, the clitoral arms, the clitoral legs, the perineal sponge, the urethral sponge, your breasts, your mouth, your lips, your tongue, your hair, your neck, your butt, you know, your feet. So I like to get away from vagina because it feels very patriarchal to me. So maybe he's holding you, and I'm just going to go with the masculine, feminine. This can be same sex partners. It can be he's, she's, they's, anything. It all works. Polarity is what we're really looking for. Who's the holder and who's the held, right? And it can switch. As you get better and better at sex, you become, as a woman, more confident, and you become more able to be the dominant in some moments. And you can be the kind of a woman who loves to be, taken, and you can become the kind of woman who loves to take. And that can just go back and forth fluidly between lovers after time and practice. Mm-hmm. So I don't want anyone to think that when I'm saying one thing, that's the only way I look at things. I like there to be a full spectrum of self-expression across everyone of every gender.
Of course. Yep.
So let's just say you're kissing and then your partner goes down on you, and that the mouth and the tongue is so lovely, and it's subtle and delicate and wonderful, and it's a really good way to begin getting some blood flow going, and it's a good way to just relax and to begin to feel sensation and let yourself down, to relax and just kind of flow with the pleasure. Mm-hmm. And then your partner may use his hands on you with some really good organic nut oil. I don't like coconut oil because it's an antibacterial oil, and our microbiomes are very delicate. So I always recommend avocado or sweet almond or something like that as a better oil for genital massage. And I mean, coconut's fine on the outside. It's great for full body massages, but I wouldn't use it internally. And then you're having your partner really just play with all that tissue. Rub your belly, rub your thighs, your mons, your external labia, the little tiny, your little, and mine are huge, your nice big labia, feeling them, kneading them, pushing, tapping, stroking. Having a lot of different techniques is very important. And stroke techniques, if you will, soft, light. Some tissue likes pressure, some tissue likes kneading, some tissue likes tapping, smoothing. You want to be really thinking about all those kinds of things, and not just going straight to the clitoris. One of the techniques that I like to describe, especially to male-bodied partners, is the bullseye touch technique. If you imagine a bullseye with the concentric rings, what a man often wants is for you to just go for the bullseye, which is his penis. He wants you to touch his penis right away. That's calming to him. But for a woman, she doesn't want her genitals touched right away. She doesn't want her clitoris touched. Like I've had male partners who are like grabbing my crotch from outside my jeans. And I'm like, what's that gonna do? Like, first of all, it's annoying. Secondly, it does nothing. Like, all my stuff is buried treasure. There ain't nothing sticking out you're gonna be touching that's gonna be turning me on by grabbing my pants. Like, but that's because he's doing to you what he wants you to do to him, and he just doesn't know. And so he wants you to touch his penis right away, but you need him to touch your hair, kiss your neck, touch your arms, touch your legs, give you a foot rub, give you a back rub, give you a belly rub. And then when he gets to your breasts, not grab your nipples, but touch your full breasts, cup your breasts, stroke your collarbone and your breastbone, kiss your neck. And then when he gets to your genitals, not just start like put his tongue right on your clitoris. Like that is what he wants. So he doesn't know. So he needs to understand that he needs to bring the blood to that whole genital system. He needs to stroke from the outside before he goes in to the clitoral structure or inside your vaginal canal. And that's just learning how to slow your partner down and give them enough techniques and touch concepts that they can begin to do more than just kind of manhandle you. Mm-hmm. So many times we women have just been roughly manhandled because our partners just don't know.
Right.
So that's where you go back to the sexual soulmate pact. I want to be able to tell you anything that I need to tell you, and, you know, take it as feedback, not as a failure, and embrace what I tell you, because I'm different every day and I want different things. So yesterday I liked it slow, today I like it faster, whatever it might be.
Right.
So,
And I know
yeah.
we forgot, because I got you talking about that, but let's go quickly to some of the nitric oxide vegetables.
Yeah,
So,
nitric oxide vegetables. So
just
basically,
helping women help with the natural way in which to, you know, non-hormonally help with blood flow.
yeah, spinach, Swiss chard, cabbage, dill, beets, ginger, kohlrabi. Those are really good nitric oxide vegetables. Leafy greens, lettuce, all the lettuces are very good. But even if you ate all of those every day, by the time you're 40 or 50, your body has 3 redundant nitric oxide systems. And it's really helpful to take a nitric oxide supplement. If you have herpes, don't take one with arginine in it, because arginine exacerbates herpes. And 75% of women over 40 in America have either herpes 1 or herpes 2 or both, as well as Epstein-Barr. And they had chicken pox when they were young, so they have the varicella zoster as well. And so I just personally don't think arginine is a good nitric oxide product. I like citrulline that's made from watermelons, or nitrates that are from leafy green vegetables like spinach, etc. And if you use mouthwash, Listerine, things like that, antibacterial mouthwash, stop doing that, because what you're doing is you're killing off the germs in the crypts of your tongue that actually convert the leafy green vegetables in the nitrates into nitrites. And then when you swallow it, your stomach acid turns it into the nitric oxide. But if you have low stomach acid, you're also not producing enough nitric oxide. So you want to keep your stomach acids high, get off those proton pump inhibitors and things like that, and use nascent iodine as your mouth bacterial cleaner instead of the Listerines and things like that.
Oh, wonderful tip. Wonderful tip. And
I know.
Don't you actually have a product specifically for nitrate? Isn't it Flow?
Yes, Flow is my organic nitric oxide supplement. When I've been researching libido for over a decade to understand what it takes to improve your libido. And what I found is that, especially for women, it's not the loss of estrogen that matters. It's actually the loss of testosterone that matters for libido. But that nitric oxide often does more for women's libido than estrogen or testosterone replacement. It's actually a loss of blood flow to the pelvic region. And especially if a woman is having urinary tract infections or recurrent vaginal infections, because here's the other thing, and loss of lubrication. So we lose the ability to lubricate our vaginas. Our vaginas don't have glands in them that lubricate. They actually, what happens is your blood plasma comes down and gives watery inlets to the vaginal mucosa, and that's what gives you lubrication. So as you age, your loss of lubrication is actually from a lack of blood flow to the pelvic bowl. So taking nitric oxide increases engorgement and increases lubrication. I've had women who literally they'll take 2 capsules of Flow in the morning, and within a matter of a couple days, they'll say, I'm literally moist down there now all the time. I couldn't believe that was all it took. And this works for men as well, because when you're getting blood flow to the genital system, the man needs the flow for erectile rigidity as well as for reversing sensation loss. Some guys, they can never quite achieve climax. They have to go and go and go. I get emails from women who are like, my husband just goes on forever and he just can't come. I can't take it anymore. And I'm like, well, the first thing you want to put him on is a nitric oxide supplement.
Interesting.
I know.
That's fantastic. Well, I also loved all of your random tips around iodine and no mouthwash and the citrines and the watermelon. So,
Yeah.
oh my gosh, so much good information for our listeners. Let's move on from self-care. We can come back because I'm sure it'll continue to weave, but let's
Yeah.
talk about one of the other tenets. So we've talked a little bit about voice. We've talked a little bit about matriarch, patriarchal, though I think we'll kind of come back to estrogen and testosterone, but let's make sure we get a little bit in on orgasmic potential.
Yeah. So remember in the very beginning, we were talking and I said, we women are having orgasms like men because that's all we've ever seen. We've either watched a little porn or we've watched a movie or what have you. We haven't seen women in their orgasmic peaks. We don't get to see that. But we women can come from a lot of different ways and a lot of different stimulation, and we can come in a lot of different ways. And I'll describe what I mean by that because I didn't say that very clearly. Let me go through some of the ways, some of the ways that that you can trigger an orgasm for a woman. So you can obviously stroke her clitoris. You can stroke her G area, the urethral sponge, the top of the vaginal canal, which loves pressure. And at first, it can release a lot of emotion because we store a lot of emotion there, but then it can be incredibly pleasurable. We have deeper up inside our vagina, the anterior fornix, that really is like the back end of the G spot or the G area, and cervical pleasure, cervical orgasms deep up inside. We also have the floor of the vagina and the ceiling of the rectum where that perineal sponge is. So there are a lot of women who, depending on, we're all wired a little differently, and some women have even more intense orgasms from anal penetration than from vaginal penetration. You also want to think about being of cross training, getting better at having orgasming from all these different types of stimulation. You can have female ejaculatory orgasms where it's not just a G-spot orgasm, but it's actually a contraction that expels fluid. And that fluid, the same way that your body recruits fluid from your blood supply down into your vagina to make your vagina lubricated, it also recruits the liquid from your blood plasma down through these little glands called Skene's glands into your urethra, and it contracts and comes out of your urethra, where your pee comes out. That's where the female ejaculation exits your body, as well as lubricating your vaginal canal. So you can have those. You can have anal orgasms, you can have G-spot, you can have squirting, or female ejaculation is what I prefer to call it because I think that's a porn term, squirting, but people know it. Clitoral, breast gasms, nipple gasms. You can have orgasms because there's actually erectile tissue in your neck. Remember when you used to have a hickey in high school? You can have neck nibbling and things and sucking on your neck that makes you come. You can have orgasms from kissing, and you can also have orgasms from going down on a penis or a toy, a dildo style toy. So you have a lot of erectile tissue in your throat. That whole deep throat Linda Lovelace thing is real. And so you can actually give yourself orgasms on a penis. A lot of women think about a blowjob as something that you're giving to your male body partner. But when you flip that, remember how I said, if you have your male body partner flip that the penis isn't a piston, it's a tongue. The same for you as the female bodied. If you flip that his penis is what you're using to stimulate your own throat, you will have throat gasms. What's interesting is you'll also be able to connect the dots between the orgasms that you have here and the orgasms that you have down in your pelvic bowl. And you'll be able to have that whole column have contractions that create intense full body orgasms. You can also have orgasms from foot rubs, stomach massages, from butt massages, from stimulating your cheeks, your butt. You can have energy orgasms. You can have orgasms on command from verbal command, just like brain gasms. There's so many different kinds of stimulation that can generate orgasmic pleasure, that you can just start to learn them all and add them into your repertoire of ways that you can orgasm. And then there are different types of orgasms as well. There's the climactic orgasm, the extended orgasm, and the expanded orgasm. And essentially, this will tie back to female self-pleasuring. The type of orgasm that you're used to having is you go up, 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 you have an orgasm, and you crash off the cliff, and you're done. And for many women, they're having that kind of orgasm because that's what they're used to with their male-bodied partner. That's what they see on the movies and television. Trust me, this is not where you want to get your information. You're leaving a lot of pleasure on the table.
Yeah, you are leaving a lot of pleasure off the table, that's for sure.
Yeah, there's so much you can learn. So what you can do is you can have one orgasm, and then you can rest and have a refractory period, and then you can have another orgasm. That's how guys have orgasms. The younger ones can do it faster than the older ones. The young ones can do it within a matter of minutes. The old ones can do it within a matter of days or weeks. But that's also men just not understanding their orgasmic potential because they're equating ejaculation with orgasm. Those are two entirely separate systems in their body and our body. So when we have an orgasm, we've a felt pleasure sensation with or without female ejaculation. Sometimes we also have female ejaculation without the felt orgasm. Like the fluid will come out and we won't have felt the orgasm. That's because they're separate systems in our body. Mm-hmm. So you can have this, climax, one of them, maybe two of them type of thing. And for most women, when they have one climax and they're done, it's because they were overstimulated. It's actually what you want to do is you want to train your body to feel lighter and lighter and lighter sensation, to be able to come from less and less stimulation instead of having to need a whole bunch of stimulation. Now, wherever you are in the stimulation, range is totally fine. And the more orgasms you have, the better you get at having them and the easier they are. It's a, self-fulfilling positive cycle, the upward pleasure spiral. You just keep getting better at doing it. Mm-hmm. But then you can also become multi-orgasmic. So instead of these big down, have to take a rest, okay, maybe I can do another one, down, have to take a rest. You can take yourself up into an orgasmic experience, and you can stay in that experience and without much of a break, a small break between them, you can have multiple orgasms. So you can keep coming.
I remember, keep going. Keep going.
Okay, go ahead.
No, go ahead.
All right. Then there's the third type of orgasm, which is kind of like the gold standard, if you will. Here's the map to the best territory, and that is the expanded orgasm. So once you get good at having multiple orgasms, then what you can do, and you can do this, you can practice this with your vibrator. That's a very good way to practice this. Take yourself into an orgasm and then see if you can take that moment of climax and stretch that out like you're stretching out taffy. You're pulling time. You're in a time warp, an orgasmic time warp that just keeps on going. So what you're doing is you're getting into the orgasm. It's like being a big wave surfer. You're getting into the wave and then you're just riding this really long wave and you're coming the whole time. That's the real trick of it, is to be able to stay in those orgasms. Now, your nervous system has to have little breaks. So it's always going to be a stair step. That the stair steps can be like, oh, this one's even better and it goes longer. Oh, now this, I had a little break. Oh, now this one's even better and it goes longer. Oh, this one's even longer and feels even better. So you're climbing up these endless lengthening peaks of orgasm. You can easily come for an hour. Every woman can. Really, the only limit to how much you can have, how many orgasms you can have, how long you can orgasm is you get tired, you get thirsty, you just need to take a break, like you've gotten cummed out. But you can go a long time.
I totally agree. And I remember the first time that I was fortunate enough to, I think actually the first time I had 5 or 6 orgasms in a lovemaking session was with a man who actually really understood women's body. He knew my body better than I did. I was younger. And I was so grateful for having that experience because it was so eye-opening. Like, oh my gosh, it's not, to your point. So many women think, okay, I'm just going to have one and that's it.
Yeah.
And then to your point about the lasting, the expanded orgasm, I think it's also really, you're right. It's usually time that women run out of, right? Especially in our busy work worlds where you're moms or you're working and you don't necessarily have time. Do you remember the Sex and the City episode years ago when was it Charlotte that fell in love with her vibrator and no one could get her out of her room because she had literally just wanted to stay in her expanded orgasm all day. But from personal experience, it's time and commitments that make us get up and stop that, to your point, or maybe food or maybe water. But so on that point of orgasmic potential, for your advice for women, again, since this is focused on women today, is it to take time and understand their bodies, learn the engorgement, learn all the different parts of their yoni, practice, because the more orgasms you have, the better you'll get. Also, you'll understand the differences in length and time and any other advice that you have on orgasm, and also not to give up, right? I know there's a lot of women that have a mental stigma, and maybe is there anything you want to say around the mental emotional part of orgasmic potential?
Yeah, I think if you keep,
no judgment, self-judgment.
If you keep giving in to patriarchal sex, you're not going to want it anymore. And it's like a short-term mentality instead of a long-term mentality. If you don't stop now and stand for your own pleasure and getting your own needs met and whatever they are in the moment, then you're actually shortchanging yourself and your partner in the long term, because you're not going to want to continue to be a sexual being if it's not fully satisfying. You're not growing in your sexuality. Your personal development and your sexual development are two sides of the same coin. And if just the fact that you're here with Karen and I and you're listening to us means that you're committed to wanting and deserving more sexual pleasure in your life. So you're already there. My only encouragement would be keep really listening to your little monkey body and letting your partner know, or letting yourself know what you want in the moment, and not thinking that intercourse is always the goal. Because the more that you, especially if you're in a relationship, the more that you just learn new techniques together, the more that you just have a lot of genital massages, or you just hug and kiss, or you just you get a foot rub, or every moment of intimacy and connection and pleasure and conversation is going to be a net positive result of more overall sex. If you think that every time you have sex with your partner, it must be giving him an orgasm in intercourse, then you're going to end up having less good sex over time. The more that you develop all of these other skills, oral, manual, etc., both giving and receiving, the less you tie everything to this end goal of penetrative orgasms, the more you'll actually net having better sex overall.
I love that advice.
More play.
Yeah, exactly. If people would prioritize self-care and time for themselves, and I think, I don't remember who I did the interview with, but really just, or maybe it was a post I wrote one time around really scheduling time for you and your partner, but just making sure you have enough time. Okay, so we've talked about our voice.
Yep.
Honoring our desires. We've talked about understanding matriarchal versus patriarchal. We've talked about self-care down there and the overall yoni, from everything from nitric oxides, testosterone, estrogen, and you said the B, estrol, biased.
Yeah, biased.
Yeah, biased.
Yeah, estriol and estradiol.
And then we just talked about orgasmic potential.
Yeah.
Is there anything on those 4 tenets for women's sexual empowerment that you feel you want to add anything else on?
I would say that G-spot massage and female ejaculation, if you're going to do one thing, if you're like, okay, what's the one thing I can do? If you're with a partner, I would learn about G-spot pleasuring and female ejaculation. And if you're solo, you don't have a partner right now, I would do like a 30-day masturbation challenge with a couple of good different types of vibrators to just kind of get everything moving again. And no matter what, if you're over 40, I would take a nitric oxide supplement, even if you're not going to do bioidentical hormone replacement, because that's going to keep you lubricated and keep your sensation going as you age. And I'd give them, if you have a male body partner, I'd give them Flow or whatever brand you want as.
Great. Thank you for those tips, Susan. So the other thing I wanted to make sure that we offered all of the listeners today is I know that you have a ton of free material from communication in the bedroom, tips and tricks, from lovemaking techniques. Of course, you've got books like this one, Sexual Soulmates, your Sexual Pact is out
Sexual
there.
Soulmate
And is
Pact.
that all on susanbratton.com? Or what website should I send people to?
I'd say the best website is personallifemedia.com, because search box at the top and you can search on anything we've talked about and get free articles that lead to free gifts. So anything that's of interest to you, they're all key searchable. So personallifemedia.com. And then I've also produced over 200 videos at betterlover.com that are all free. And they're everything from estrogen replacement, all about testosterone, to, you know, how to make love to a man, how to make love to a woman, oral pleasuring, sex positions for stamina. You know, for a lot of people, they're in partnership with a male-bodied partner who either has erectile dysfunction or delayed ejaculation or premature ejaculation. These are the issues that guys deal with. And I have solutions for all of those on the website as well. So often for us as women partners, it falls on us. We're like your mom. And so when they start having issues, we're the ones that have to figure out how to take care of them. And so I have a lot of really good videos on self-care, as well as communication techniques, as well as sex techniques, as well as different orgasm techniques. Some programs include female liquid orgasm, which teaches you or you and your partner how to have G-spot orgasms and how to have female ejaculation. I have Expand Her Orgasm Tonight, which is a program that is about how to have those long extended orgasms, those expanded orgasms, those taffygasms. That's amazing. And that's really, if you're in a relationship and you have someone where you can have an expanded orgasm practice with your partner, it's basically a clitoral technique that's going to get you engorged and then take you up into these long expanded orgasms. And what's great about it is that if you're not the kind of woman who's currently having orgasms from intercourse, this is the shortcut. This is the on-ramp to orgasms from intercourse, is this clitoral stroking technique. It gets you to the point where you're so good at coming from the lightest of clitoral stimulation that you could really start to come from intercourse without even touching your clitoris. It's amazing. So that's a good one too. There's tons of free stuff. There's free reports on those websites as well. Really just of interest to you is available.
And then everyone else, Susan also has a very active YouTube channel, and this will be posted there afterwards. Thanks. As well. And then, you know what we did not talk about that I wanted women to know, Susan, and get your opinion on, is one last thing, is a lot of women don't realize, and I bring this up because, as you know, from my surgeries from ovarian cancer, I lost all hormones because my cancer was hormone receptor positive. So male semen is very, very healthy to a woman's vagina, especially someone like me who lost all of her natural hormones. And so for women that are out there that are going through perimenopause or menopause, if they're in a relationship where they feel safe, sexually safe, um, for having a man come in them, it's actually very healthy, right?
Yeah.
So I wanted,
Oh,
if you had anything to say on that.
yeah. It's amazing how symbiotic the masculine feminine is. The semen, his seminal fluid has luteinizing hormones, it has serotonin, it has testosterone. It was so funny. My daughter is a surfer, and he said, I wish I had more courage because I want to surf bigger waves. And she was in a monogamous relationship with her boyfriend, and she uses an IUD, so she's protected from conception. So she doesn't need to use a condom, and she's a monogamous relationship. And I said, well, if you want to surf bigger waves, just make sure that your boyfriend climaxes inside you, because you get a testosterone injection every time.
Right.
She's like, you're kidding me. She's like, this is like the weirdest that a mother ever gave her daughter. But this is what it's like when your mother is a sex nerd, and she gives you practical, actionable advice. That's what I always pride myself on. It's like, I don't want the lolly la stuff. Just tell me what I need to do. And so one of the nice things about it.
Advice. It's great mother advice. If more mothers were open with their daughters, at the time I spent in Italy growing up, it's so much less patriarchal than America in terms of the sexual education that the Italian parents will teach their children, because they're like, what? Sex, it's part of life,
Yeah.
So it sounds like you're a great mom.
Oh, thank you.
Beautiful. Taylor's beautiful. All right, so I think that we've given our listeners a ton of information.
We have.
Susan. Oh my gosh.
Probably more than they were ever bargaining for.
I will definitely put all of the URLs in the information on the post, and we're gonna post this next week. And I'm so grateful. So thank you. And listeners, remember, Susan Bratton, sex expert for millions, and just so compassionate and loving. She is out there to help you all have better relationships for long term and have a passionate life. So thank you so much, Susan. Loved having you, and we'll talk to you soon.
Thank you, Karen.